In 1998, Marvel Entertainment launched a superhero-themed restaurant in which you could chow down on Captain America burgers, Mutant Chicken Wings, and a side of Hulk smashed potatoes, all while a teenager dressed as Wolverine asked you, "Is Pepsi okay?" But barely a year and a half later, the restaurant closed its doors forever. And yet the tale of Marvel Mania Hollywood is not just that of a failed restaurant, but a window into the larger story of Marvel's struggle for survival in the late 1990s. A time when the comic book industry faced a devastating crash, and the company only narrowly escaped doom. Hey heroes, I'm Josh from Panels to Pixels, and this is the story of Marvel Mania Hollywood. The mid-1990s were a turbulent time for the comic book industry, and at the very centre of that turbulence was Marvel. After a boom period driven by the rise of the collector's market, new number ones, gimmick covers, and people buying multiple copies of books in hopes of turning a quick profit, the comics biz experienced a significant crash. During this time, Marvel's overexpansion and reliance on this speculative market left the company with over $500 million in debt. And by December 1996, the publisher that had been selling comics by the millions just a few years earlier was forced to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But amidst this maelstrom of financial feuding and corporate capitulation, Marvel, newly merged with toy company Toy Biz, plotted its future world domination. Marvel Studios was formed, characters were licensed out for big budget movies, and the groundwork was laid for the eventual superhero revolution heralded by the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But if you're watching this video, you probably know all that, right? You know, this is well-trodden ground here on Comic Book YouTube. So what you might not know is that themed restaurants were hot shit in the 1990s. Places like the Hard Rock Cafe and Planet Hollywood offered an immersive dining experience, with props and memorabilia lining the walls. And it turned out that eating a below-average burger next to one of Eric Clapton's old guitars was something that a lot of people wanted to do. Like, inexplicably, a lot of people. Off the success of its movie-themed restaurant chain, Planet Hollywood started looking to other concepts, including the official All-Star Cafe, a sports version of Planet Hollywood which opened in New York City just a few blocks from Marvel HQ in 1995. And so, around this same time, plans were in the works for a partnership between the Marvel Entertainment Group and Planet Hollywood to develop a themed restaurant chain, yes chain, but we'll get to that in a minute, based around the publisher's popular brand of characters. Marvel Mania opened its doors in February 1998. The restaurant was located in Los Angeles as part of Universal Studios Hollywood, and was described by the New York Times as a football field-sized eatery. Giant cutouts of popular Marvel heroes adorned the entrance, and once inside, guests were greeted by larger-than-life statues of the likes of Captain America, Mr. Fantastic, Rogue, and it's the 90s, so of course, Venom. Sufferers of sensory overstimulation beware, as blown-up comic art covers every inch of wall space, with huge word balloons and sound effects cascading from the ceiling. Huge interactive video screens blast Spider-Man cartoons directly into children's retinas, while rows of Marvel vs. Capcom arcade machines hum, clunk, and chime in the distance. And if you've ever wondered what my home would look like if I won the lottery, I mean, come on. There's a very classic Marvel sensibility to the pop art decor here, with characters often depicted in their Silver Age costumes and retro futurist faux machinery plucked from the artwork of Jack Kirby himself. And I only mention this because it might seem at odds with the comic style de jour of the 1990s. There's a distinctive lack of spikes, chains, and pouches at this family restaurant, because they were clearly going for something more nostalgic here. It's also important to recognise where Marvel Comics were at in 1998. You know, that extreme art style of the likes of Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld had lost its luster a little bit, and the publisher was trying to recapture its glory days by looking towards the past. The 4-issue mini-event Heroes Reborn: The Return had reset the status quo for some of Marvel's longest-running but low-sales suffering titles, such as The Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, The Fantastic Four, and Thor, with new number ones and costumes that harken back to the 60s, eschewing the armoured, leather-jacketed, boob-windowed looks that had dominated the earlier decade. So when kids and kids at heart visited Marvel Mania Hollywood, it would feel like stepping into a time machine, one that would transport them to a 4-colour world of Ben-Day dots and onomatopoeic sound effects, a giant monument to Marvel's past success. Marvel Mania also hosted meet and greets with costumed characters such as Spider-Man, and thanks to this incredible home movie footage uploaded by YouTube user Trito, we get to see the webhead idling from table to table and posing for photos like the overly familiar owner of your favourite Italian restaurant. Hey, how are we all doing tonight? Don't forget to order the Fin Fang Fettuccine. Speaking of which, I'm actually feeling a little peckish, so why don't we take a look at this menu that I bought specifically for this video, but also because I've always wanted to own one, and now I can write it off as a work expense. Let's start off with some drinks then, shall we? We could get a round of web shooters, that's pretty cute, or a cocktail called Journey into Mystery, which admittedly sounds like you might get roofied. Flipping the page to the astonishing appetizers, would anybody like to split some Shang-Chi's Chinese tacos? Gambit sugarcane shrimp sounds good to me, mon ami, but hold the Howard the Duck's chicken fingers. Ugh. When it comes to mains, you can take your pick from a wide selection of galactic greens, sensational soups, pulse-pounding pizzas, and stanwitches. Enough said. And while I'm going through this, a few more personal highlights are the oxymoronically titled Extreme Vegetable Pizza and the Fantastic Four Cheese Pasta. Just chef's kiss. I'll just have the Doc Ox wok, thank you. But strange as it might sound, nobody's really going to a themed restaurant for the food. And for me, the standout attraction at Marvel Mania Hollywood would have been the wall of props. Captain America's shield, Cyclops' visor, the Infinity Gauntlet. And you know, when you think about this as Marvel's answer to the Hard Rock Cafe or Planet Hollywood, with their collections of famous musical instruments and movie props like the cane from Citizen Kane, it makes perfect sense to have the weapons, hardware, and paraphernalia of the Marvel Universe on display here. Except all of this stuff had to be created from scratch, specially for this restaurant. There was nowhere else to see it. And one of the things I love about this is that the prop makers were clearly using the 1982 official handbook of the Marvel Universe as a reference. And so you get one-to-one models of relatively obscure items like the Fantastic Four's signal device or the Avengers Priority Identicard. Years ago now, I made a video about Peter David and George Perez's 2-issue Hulk epic Future Imperfect. And I talked about how, as a kid, I would just stare at the double-page spread of Rick Jones's memorabilia room. It would have been a dream come true for me to go to Marvel Mania Hollywood and see all of these iconic helmets, costumes, and armaments that at the time only existed on the comic book page. You've got to remember, this is before the Marvel movie boom had really kicked off, and I've always been fascinated by that time when all we could do was imagine what our beloved superheroes would look like in real life. Love or hate the movies, the ubiquity of the MCU and its designs have kind of robbed me of that sense of wonder, and if I could Thanos snap all of the movies out of existence and go back to being 8 years old at Marvel Mania Hollywood and seeing a suit of Iron Man armor in the flesh for the first time, I'd do it without any hesitation. I think this is what really encapsulates my deep felt affection for this period of Marvel, around the turn of the millennium. It was that joy of imagination. Some of you might remember my video on Universal Orlando's Marvel Superhero Island, aka the Marvel theme park stuck in 1999. And I always intended to talk about the Marvel Mania restaurant as a companion to that video, because really they're two parts of the same story. But while Marvel Superhero Island still stands today as a time capsule of Marvel fandom in a pre-MCU world, this failed Marvel restaurant has largely been forgotten. For a project that arrived at such a pivotal point in the company's history, when Marvel was making a monumental merchandising push into the mainstream, there is very little information about Marvel Mania Hollywood available online. Just press releases, a few home movies uploaded to YouTube, and first-hand accounts of diners who managed to make the trip in the short time that the restaurant was open. Marvel Mania Hollywood served its last linguini team-up featuring Mighty Meat Sauce on September 10th, 1999, just 19 months after opening its doors. While it's possible, nay probable, that the world wasn't quite ready for a superhero-themed dining experience, it was also a victim of Planet Hollywood's own financial woes. The themed restaurant fad was fading fast by the late 90s, and only 3 years after Marvel had filed for bankruptcy, Planet Hollywood would do the same in October 1999. Those plans for a chain of Marvel restaurants that I mentioned earlier were unceremoniously scrapped, and the building that housed Marvel Mania Hollywood was stripped of its comic book interior, remaining vacant until 2007, when it was rethemed as Stage 13, before later being incorporated into Universal's House of Horrors, presumably haunted by the ghost of Mary Jane's roasted herb chicken with gamma grilled vegetables. Those are real, by the way. In the end, Marvel Mania became a microcosm of Marvel's wider struggle to establish an audience at the dawn of the 21st century. This was a comics publisher drowning in 10 years of aggressive overexpansion and desperately groping around for something, anything, to keep it afloat. That lifeline would eventually come in the form of cinematic success, but it certainly didn't come from a themed restaurant. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Some might call Marvel Mania Hollywood a mistake. But what happens when comic book writers make mistakes? Marvel accidentally calls Spider-Man Superman, and DC has to recall thousands of comics because a pink tentacle looks like, well, something else. To find out all about that, click the video on screen now, and I will see you over there.